What's up, YouTube? Today, while I start to build my base in my new Minecraft world, I'm going to be sharing with you some unexplainable, unusual stories I found along Reddit the other day. Please don't make fun of my building skills. I'm absolutely awful at it. Feel free to email me your stories as I want to do a video on them. Obviously, I'll read them anonymously. Anyways, let's get to the stories. The first story is called Home Alone with My Old Dog. Although it doesn't seem like it, this happened quite a while back, probably over 10 years ago. I was in the later years of high school and was home alone. My parents were at a wedding that required them to stay at a hotel, and my brother worked the night shift. At that time, my family lived in a very well-known East Coast city, in a blue-collar neighborhood that was starting to take a nosedive. As a teenager, I was a bit of a loner. I wasn't a nerd or anything. I was a big dude who had friends and went on dates, but I'm a natural introvert, so I cherished the rare alone time that I got. This weekend, I was looking forward to engaging in my normal empty house routine, play some PlayStation on the big screen TV, then order a late takeout dinner, pizza or Chinese, and pig out while watching some Dragon Ball Z. Then, around 2 a.m., fall asleep on the couch with my old dog, Cecil. Cecil was a beagle who was as old as the hills and had been in our family for about 8 years. He was quiet and peaceful and spent his time begging for food and sleeping. Unlike most beagles, Cecil never howled or barked. He was more than content to rest his head on your lap and spend the night there. Anyway, back to the story. It's approximately 1 a.m. I had just finished the last slice of pizza and was dozing off on the couch when I hear a bang coming from the back alleyway. I didn't think much of it. Anyone who has lived in the city knows noises happen at all moments of the night. Cecil's head popped up off my lap, and the hair on his back stood up. He was always a bit skittish. So I calmed, homed down, and started dozing off again. Not more than 2 minutes later, I hear another bang, and Cecil did something I never seen him do before. He leapt off the couch and ran like the wind towards the door, leading to the basement, barking and growling like a dog twice his size. The look on his face reminded me of German Shepherd Canine unit. I'd never seen him like that before, which got my adrenaline pumping. Through the dog's barking, I can now make out a persistent banging. There was a seldom used door in the basement that led to our back alleyway. It was old and rusted and was hard to open, even with a key, and it made a lot of noise. I suddenly realized that someone was trying to break into my house through my basement door. Quick little bit of context for anyone who hasn't lived in a bad neighborhood. If someone tries to get into your house and moves on after they realize the door is locked, they want your stuff. If someone is persistently trying to get into your house despite the door being locked, well, they want you. Knowing this, I rush upstairs to grab the heavy wood baseball bat that I keep under my bed for situations like this. Then, I head down my basement. I probably should have ran, but I was a macho teenager with a tough guy complex, and plus, I had nowhere to go. While I'm heading down the stairs to my basement, Cecil blows past me with the speed and aggression of a dog, half his age. Suddenly, I hear a man's voice say, "Oh, freak," and the banging stopped. I didn't call the cops or anyone else, which was probably the dumbest thing I've ever done. I just sat up for the rest of the night with a bat in hand. My brother came home that morning, and I told him what had happened. We went to the basement door to take a look, and when we gave it a tug to open it, the whole door fell off. This psycho was one good shove away from getting in my house, but old Cecil scared him off. I'm pretty sure that lazy, fat old dog saved my life. When I tell this story to people, they dismiss his actions as a dog doing what a dog was supposed to do. But when I tell you that Cecil never barked or moved that fast in his life, you can take that to the bank. It was almost like he knew the urgency, like he knew that door was going to give. A few years back, we had to have him put down because he just had no will to live anymore. Before the injection, I got a moment alone with him. I thanked him one last time for his friendship and for what he did that night. At this point, I was a grown man with a wife and kids. I'm convinced none of that would have happened without old Cecil. Thanks, pal. I miss you. The next story we're going to get into is called Being Left Alone at a House in the Middle of the Mojave Desert Back, around 1992. I was in high school at that time. I was a sophomore. And unlike most of my friends in school, I didn't work the typical high school jobs like McDonald's, Taco Bell,
some retail job in the mall or work at the local grocery store. I was very good with my hands and work jobs like construction, demolition, flooring, and auto mechanics. All of my contacts, I worked under the table as I started working on some of these jobs at 14. It was beneficial for both of us as I was only called in when needed, and I was the guy willing to only work evenings and weekends. So one of my contacts worked doing remodeling projects like at restaurants, bars, retail shops, and typical commercial projects that we could only work after hours. Like I said, that worked out for both of us because I went to school and would sometimes work after school or weekends. For this one contact, it wasn't uncommon for him to leave me alone at a site and have a list of things for me to do alone, mostly demolition work. I did this while the other crew was doing the installation or remodeling work. I was the kid but had their respect because I did what I was supposed to do and did the work of a man without complaints. I got paid good, and in one night, I couldn't make more than my friends did working all week at McDonald's. This one instance, I got a call from the guy I worked for, and he said he had a project for me, and if I could work the following Saturday. I said, yeah, sure. He said, be sure to bring food and lots to drink because there was nothing nearby. I used to have a small cooler and would fill it with drinks like Cokes, Gatorade, or whatever, plus chips and a couple sandwiches. Back then, I could eat a whole pizza by myself and burn it all off. He picked me up that Saturday morning as I didn't have a car or license yet. So he would pick me up and drive me to sites for work and leave me alone there. I rarely worked with his other crews as they were the more skilled labor guys. I was just the tear-out kid. Here is the part that was my major downfall to this story. I didn't pay attention to where we were going. I was too busy talking to him, and I think we were talking about cars. You see, at the time, my goal was to save up enough money to buy an old muscle car and rebuild it. It took a long time to arrive to the site. As we drove up, it was in the middle of nowhere. Now, you may not think California has places like this, but back in the early 1990s, out in the Mojave Desert, yes, it was big plots of land and homes, more than a few city blocks apart. I knew we left the highway and went down a few other 2-lane highways for a long distance. I remember he asked me about my drinks, and he pulled out a brand new jug of water that he had in his truck that looked like it had been there a while and told me to take it with me for what, just in case. He said that the water to the house I would be working at was off. As we pull up to the property, he is in a hurry to drop off tools and get to another work site. So I hurry up and help him with things like breaker bars, shovels, pry bar, hammer, broom, several big trash bins, and a small tool bag that I often had with me. He tells me that he will be back to pick me up at about 5 to 6 p.m., as there is no electricity to this site either. Plus, it should only take me till then to do what I needed to do. That was always his way of saying, I'm only paying you till this time, so you better get everything done by then. It was never too outrageous, and we always had a good understanding on time and tasks. He drove away, and I am at this property all alone. I walk into the house. It's mostly empty. My job was to remove all remaining furniture, contents, and appliances. Remove all the flooring, gut the kitchen and bathrooms, and remove all of the wood paneling. This project was going to be like what we now call a flip. They were going to fix it up and sell it. Almost immediately, I get kind of spooked by the place. It was very odd. Now, mind you, I am used to being on sites alone, working all night. This was the daytime on a Saturday and bright outside. However, the house was old, dark, musty, and kind of cool inside. The kind of cool that gives you goosebumps. To add to the spook factor of the house, let me describe what I remember about the house. Imagine walking back in time to the 1960s or earlier. Dark green carpet that looked like matted down broccoli. Pine wood everywhere that had a darker stain to it. The wood paneling wasn't the kind used in the 1980s sheet paneling, but actual board paneling, tonged and groove old window curtains that all look like someone's grandma made, avocado green sink, stovetop oven, and the stuff that was left behind like old furniture in a closet full of old stuffed animals that looked to be about 30 years old. The style of this house was like an old Western ranch, as there were wagon wheels inside and outside the house. I had an old battery-powered radio, but only could get a few stations, but was just happy for the noise. I started removing all the junk from the house, and As I normally did on a project, if there wasn't a dumpster on site, I made a trash pile. I tore up all the flooring next. To my delight, everything seemed to come up with ease, and it was rip, cut, and toss. I took a big demo hammer to the kitchen and tore it apart in less than an hour. I ended up using that big jug of water that my boss had given me to wash my hands and face periodically. But by late noon, as most who know the desert, the dryness also starts to take moisture from you, especially if you are working in it. So by late afternoon, I'm down to my last drink, and I had already ate everything I brought. No worries, I thought the guys should be here in a couple hours to pick me up. As the time gets closer for them to arrive, I am all done with my tasks. I even sweep the entire place, and it's now ready for the rehab crew to get to work, making this place look modern. The time of year I was out here, it wasn't a typical hot desert day, but, in the desert, as soon as the sun goes down, it starts to cool rapidly. I had a flannel shirt, but that wasn't enough. And it was starting to get dark. This was the time before cell phones were common, and, well, there was no electricity, water, and phone service to the house. I climbed up to get on top of the roof of the house to get a better look to see if I can see something in the distance. And what looked like miles down, I saw a smaller road that this dirt road led to and a few homes. But those homes were all in dark. My first thought was hike down to a neighbor's house and ask them to use the phone. The nearest house, no one was home, and this home also looked abandoned. If you remember, the early 90s was the start of a decline of the economy and recession, so it wasn't uncommon for a lot of foreclosed homes and a tract of homes. A lot of those I worked on at that time. I started to think about my options as darkness fast approached. One was to stay at the house until morning, to hike with what little water I had a few miles in the dark, Mojave night. 3, wait until early morning and hike out of there to some sort of civilization. It also suddenly occurred to me that no one knew where I was except my boss. I don't know if he told anyone else where I was, and certainly my family wouldn't miss me until maybe Sunday night. But I didn't even tell them I was going to work there. They knew me and how much I would work to save up for my car, that they never worried about me not coming home. As full darkness was all around me, it was amazing looking out at the night sky, and lucky for me, the moon was bright. I didn't have a flashlight or any way to make a fire. Even though I tried, I was going to make a small bonfire out of broken up construction debris as the temperatures started to fall, probably down to the low 40s. My only option was to go back inside the empty, creepy house that somehow seemed even more creepy, sitting alone in the dark. At about 8 p.m., the batteries on my radio, which was my only source of little light and noise, started to die. I grabbed an old wooden chair and sit in the living room of this house, facing the door. I'm starting to hear wind, odd noises, which I assume are animals in the distance, and what sounds like leaves cracking under feet. I'm starting to shiver from the cold, so I set off on trying to start a fire in the fireplace. Imagine like Tom Hanks in Castaway trying to start a fire. At least this is keeping my mind in my situation. Sitting in this living room next to the fireplace, the house seems even more darker than it should have, mind you. In the daytime, the inside seemed dark, so with only the moonlight, I was pretty much sitting in complete darkness. My mind starts to play tricks on me. I am seeing shadows moving outside and inside the house. I'm also starting to hear someone talking, like whispers or something. I get up from my chair and yell out, "Hello!" And just as I do, I hear something fall from the other side of the house. I run over to the door and go outside again. At least in the moonlight, I can see better. But off in the distance, I hear noises and see movement, but can't make it out. I have my pile of tools by the edge of the house, ready for when my boss picks me up, so I run over there and grab Big Daddy. It was my heavy pry bar that I used in demo. I was ready to defend myself for who or what was out there. I have to keep moving because my undershirt and flannel shirt wasn't enough to keep me warm. The wind was also starting to pick up, and for as far as I could see, no lights around me. I didn't want to try to make it up on the house again out of fear of falling in the dark, but I get up on top of the gate just to try and gain a little bit of altitude to see if I see some house lights on nearby or car lights. My mind went to the stories that circled around at the time about how people would come up to Mojave Desert and bury bodies, how there were Satanist groups out here, and how people would go missing for no reason out here. Every noise had me on edge, and every shadow had my heart pounding. Now I knew no one was in that house, but I swear I would hear noises from inside. I huddled up on the front porch, looking in the living room window, expecting to see someone at any moment. By around 11 p.m., I look at my watch, thinking this is going to be a long night, as all this stuff only happened since it got dark. I don't know how I am going to make it another 6 hours till daybreak. I start thinking the moment it gets to be daybreak, like the moment light starts to appear on the horizon, I'm going to take the little water I had left and walk east. I knew going east I would eventually make it somewhere. The dirt road I was off of, I knew that direction led to a paved road. Closer to midnight, I am wide awake. My eyes are fixed on the dirt road, thinking that any time now a car would come down, and maybe they can call for help for me. I remember casually turning to look back into the house. As all this time I keep hearing noises, but telling myself maybe a rat or some animal. I see a shadow of a person move from the kitchen to down the hall. I jump up from sitting down and was like, that is not an animal, that is a human. I start backing my way out of the porch towards the pile and trip over debris and fall down on the ground. I get up but fall again. It was like something pushed me down or my imagination. But all of a sudden these bright lights are coming closer to me as I am laying on the ground. I jump up and it's my boss. He is looking at me like, what the heck are you doing? I was just so glad to see him. I wasn't mad or anything. Just asked him what happened. He said that he was sorry, but he thought the other crew was coming to get me, and they thought that he was coming. So no one actually came. He said it wasn't until later in the evening he asked the other crew leader about how far along I got that he said I didn't go get him. Well, it took him almost 2 hours from where they were working to come get me. He felt really bad and told me he was going to pay me for the entire time I was out there. He also grabbed a can of Coke from his cooler and asked me if I was thirsty, and I drank that all in one gulp. Once we got back towards civilization, he went through a fast food drive-thru, and I ate like I had never ate before. As he was driving me home, I asked him about the house. I told him how creepy it was. He said he didn't have any information on the house, only just what we were supposed to do. After that, I made sure to always keep extra batteries, flashlight, and double the amount of liquid. Our final story we're going to be getting into today is called Something Strange. Yeah, it happened to me in Mount Rainier National Park. I wanted to post this here to maybe get some feedback on something that happened while camping in my van in Rainier National Park yesterday. The circumstances around what happened are very foggy, as I have very limited recollection of what happened, as everything happened in a haze, but pictures that definitely prove that something, whatever it was, did in fact happen. Let me give some context. I, 23M, went to a van life meetup in Enumclaw, Washington over the weekend. The city is close by Mount Rainier National Park, and because I had already made the trip, I figured I might as well camp overnight nearby the park in a dispersed camping spot in the forest. Brought some ingredients to make carne asada tacos, downloaded some movies, and was ready for a nice cozy evening in my van, something which I do on most weekends in various campsites around the state. I hiked around the campsite, which was very nice, save for the large amounts of trash which was littered about, which actually made me really sad. The trail led to 2 fire pits not too far from where I had parked, and it ended at a quiet riverbank. It seemed like it was a spot that local teens might go to drink and smoke weed. There was even a log bench with the words 420 painted colorfully on its seat. I wasn't sure how recently people had been here, and there were open half-drink cans around the fire pits, what seemed cold. I wasn't quite sure if this meant anything in the moment, but it was a bit on the warmer side outside at around 70 degrees. I decided that it likely wasn't an active camp and stayed. The spot wasn't terribly isolated. Every 30 minutes or so, someone would drive by to claim other campsites down the lonely fire road, some trucks, and even an RV. People like me looking to spend time out in nature and who don't want to shell out that extra cash for a campsite. After exploring the area, I went back to my van to start making dinner. I used a satellite communicator to check in with my friends and family, as I didn't have any surface this deep into the forest. The sun was setting as I sat down to eat my tacos. I left my doors open to let the air flow, and the cool breeze felt amazing. But after eating and when it was quiet, I started noticing a sound in the distance. They sounded like gunshots, really almost like cannon shots, deep rhythmic booms echoing in the valley every few seconds. What accompanied those sounds was a still distant yet closer noises of a chainsaw in the distance. Now, neither of these noises are very uncommon to hear when camping on fire roads, to be honest. People in Washington love their guns, and it wouldn't be unheard of for someone to use a chainsaw to cut down larger trunks into firewood. Summer fire ban be damned. I also saw some campers start to leave, including an RV, which was particularly unusual. Finding a campsite for an RV can be hard, but it is especially hard to find one at night. The rule is to always find camp before the sun sets, and the sun had only just disappeared from the sky. Something spooked them, and I wondered if it would be wise to follow their lead. However, I had unwashed dishes on the counter, and I was in no mood to move, and so I didn't. I did, however, triple check that all my doors and windows were locked before drifting to sleep. That night can only be described as hazy and disorienting. I have very little memory of anything that happened, but the evidence that something had most definitely happened was very evident. I remember being awake in the pitch black of night, struggling to breathe. Not choking. My lungs were filling with air, but I remember the feeling of drowning. I remember the pleading desperation for air. I remember trying to see with my sight, being wholly consumed by the darkness in front of me. I have a memory of trying to punch out a window to no avail. I remember making my way to the side doors of my van to open the door to breathe. And then I woke up in bed and the sun was in the sky. I would have chalked this to a really bad dream, but the damage around me was evident. There was definitely a struggle. Some of my window blinds were sliced and ruined. One of my windows had scratch marks from the inside. Even the air vent on my ceiling was obliterated from the inside. I didn't think I was even capable of this, and the van was well ventilated, so I am unsure as to why I would have trouble breathing in the first place. My carbon monoxide detector was silent, and the van was well ventilated after cooking. I have no idea what possible could have caused me to do this and ruin my lovely van. I saw no indication of any kind of forced entry, and all the damage was done from the inside by me trying to get out, I guess. My knuckles were very sore, as were my feet, as I probably hit them hard on the various cabinets in the van on my way out. A pole I used to prop up my canopy was strangely out of place in the middle of the floor and broken at the ends. I have never had any form of night terrors or sleepwalking before this, except for one incident, also nearby Mount Rainier National Park. A few months ago, my friends and I were driving through Enumclaw trying to find a camping spot we might be able to post up at. It was nighttime already, and as I said before, finding camp at night can be pretty difficult. We were driving down the same road I had taken for my recent trip, and we had gotten a tip from a local about a mountain which had some good dispersed camping. We were tired and hungry and just wanted to start setting up camp. We passed a few spots, mostly mud and rock, none too level, and none too appealing. We decided to pick the least muddy spot we could find, and I helped them set up their tents. It was one of my first trips in my van, and I was excited to test it out. As we were setting up camp, we heard the wind blowing ominously through the trees, causing them to creak loudly, threatening us with a fall. And this particular area of the mountain was very unleveled in the most unsettling way. So we thus referred to this campsite as the ominous slant. When we slept that night, a few things of note happened. My friend Melissa claims to have heard squeaking noises as if someone were wearing a latex bodysuit. She refers to the sound as the happy gimper. Kurt, her boyfriend, swears he heard a bear that night. However, the worst of it was when, in the middle of the night, they both heard me yell bloody murder from my van. Kurt rushed out of the tent, tripping a few times in his haste, and rushed over to swing open the doors, but I was asleep. He asked what was wrong, and he thought that someone was attacking me. I had no idea what he was talking about. I have no memory at all of any nightmares preceding it or anything. I have no idea what any of this means. I've been on many trips in the van since with different people, and nothing like this has happened anywhere else. It has only happened when I've been in Mount Rainier National Park. To be honest, thinking about the feeling of drowning in darkness makes me very much not want to revisit the subject anytime soon. So I don't believe I'll be visiting the park anytime in the near future for camping either.